What are your thoughts on age of accountability, and how do you think God's mercy and also justice plays out when babies and young kids pass away?
Okay, great question. So just so you guys know, if you may not be familiar with the term age of accountability, it was traditional in Jewish thinking that there was a time in life that you passed from kidhood to adulthood. And that was at 12 years old. In the Jewish world, you would have a special party, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, that would be your transition from kidhood to adulthood. And all of a sudden, as a kid, you kind of have an excuse for being stupid and not doing things right. But once you hit that age of accountability, you are accountable as an adult for everything from that point forward. It was an important rite of passage. Now, based on the question, I would say some people have also written into that idea that 12 years old is the age at which you are accountable for whether or not you're saved. And I don't think it's that clear biblically what age you're accountable for whether you can be saved or not. You do know that at some point you go back to 3 years old, 2 years old, 1 year old, and you go, how much can a kid understand at those ages about, the gospel and be able to make a decision for themselves? I think that's a legitimate question. And at some point along the line, we're going to be accountable for whether we said yes or no to Jesus. But the Bible doesn't have a specific age for what time that is that we can say yes or no to Jesus. For me, because the question mentioned, babies and little kids, for me, I think that there is a wideness in God's mercy towards people who don't have the ability to say yes to him. I don't think that God says, oh, you died when you were 3 months old, you're automatically going to hell. That's just not the kind of God that we have. It's not the kind of God that we serve. In fact, there's a story that comes from the life of King David. When King David had an affair with Bathsheba, the baby was born and the baby was sick. David went into sackcloth and ashes during this time, and he was praying that God would bring healing to his baby, and the baby still died. And so when the baby died, David came out of sackcloth and ashes, washed himself up, and told his servants, make some dinner, I'm hungry. And the servants were like, hey, when the baby was sick, you were in sackcloth and ashes. When the baby died, you seem to be fine. What's the story on that? And David said, I will go to be with him. So there was this confidence that David had that his baby had an eternal home that David was going to as well. And so his mourning time was over because he had a confidence in what would happen in eternity. That's the clearest biblical passage that talks about what happens to babies when they die. And so I've mentioned this before in church a couple of times. Kelly and I have had 2 miscarriages. And so we have 2 babies that we believe are in heaven, Simeon and Adelia, and we think that we're going to see them one day after we die and go to be at heaven with them, because I believe that there's a wideness in God's mercy for people who don't have the capacity to be able to say yes to him because of age or mental illness or other things that are there. I just believe that God in his sovereignty knows all things and can create mercy for those episodes.